So I went to college. I only went 1 year, and that 1 year that I went to college, music really started taking over for me, and I was playing all the time. I played more than I actually went to classes. So thank you so much for having me too. I mean, I really
Yeah, of
appreciate it. I really
course. I'd
appreciate
love
it.
you have such a cool journey from what I'm reading about you and like, with writing music for film and that stuff. So I'm curious on that. And of course, we'll talk about
Yeah.
your new record as
Thank
well.
you. Yeah. Cool.
Sweet.
Cool.
Well, so were you born and raised in Boston? Is that what you said?
I was. Yeah.
Okay.
Um.
What was that like?
Um. Very suburban blue collar upbringing, right? My dad is electrician,
Mm-hmm.
mom, homemaker. And but I got the music bug early on, like 10 or 11 years old, and started picking up the guitar. My mom got me a cheap guitar and, took the guitar lessons. But um I didn't like it so much, so I dropped it.
Hmm.
But
Oh,
then when I got
interesting.
into then when I got into high school, I picked the guitar back up again, and
Mm-hmm.
then from that point on, I didn't look back.
What
And
changed? Do you know? Like
I think it
what
was
drew you
girls
back to it?
probably number
Oh,
one,
okay. Sure. Yeah, look
and
cool with a guitar.
then just the love of music, just the mechanics of it, just the putting chords together, and way back when I wasn't singing at all, so it was all about the music, the melody lines, and how everything connected together. It was
Mm-hmm.
like a puzzle piece. I mean, pieces of a puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
So that was it, and high school girls, and
Were you
uh,
in a band in high school?
yeah, well, it was this little pickup, a bunch of guys that were in high school with me. We were called the Five Little Seeds because we had to smoke a
Oh,
little bit.
got
So we
you.
got,
Yeah.
hey, that's a great name. All right, let's use it. But nothing really serious until right after high school, when I really started writing songs, legitimately. And then
Okay. And that, like, were you still in Boston at this point?
I was, yeah,
Did you go
yeah.
to Berkeley or no?
No, no,
Okay.
I'm self-taught.
Wow.
That
Okay.
that one time I took lessons when I was 10 for about
Was
6
it?
months. That was it. And then
Okay.
I guess, I have an ear, I hear something and I can play it. And
Mhm.
doing the composing thing is I use the guitar a lot, but I use the keyboard and a piano a lot too. So
Mhm.
I wouldn't profess to be a piano player or a keyboard player, but I can do it when we're in, a studio setting, let's say. I wouldn't be able to perform
Gotcha.
anything live, but
Okay.
yeah, so no lessons, really. And um
But you said you
eh,
started writing songs like out of high school. Like, was it
right.
something you decided when you graduated, like, I really want to pursue a career in
No.
music, or like how did that
No, no,
happen?
no, no. Well, kind of, yeah, a little bit, because starting to put three chords together, and a little bit of melody lines here, and then um, I got I got a scholarship to college for springboard diving, because I was big on the swim team throughout high school.
Wow,
And
I was on the swim team too. It's funny because
yeah,
I just interviewed somebody, like the last interview I just did was also on the swim
oh
team
no,
and swam in college. It's just bizarre.
great. So I went to college. I only went 1 year, and that 1 year that I went to college, music really started taking over for me, and I was playing all the time. I played more than I actually went to classes. So that was the end of that right there.
Sure.
And
Okay.
at that point, that's when I really, thought that, hey, maybe I can get a give it this a go. And found a bunch of guys up in Boston to start a band, and then we were off to the races, and started writing original music. And it was like a three-piece kind of power punk band, back then
Hmm.
in Boston. It was kind of, they called it garage rock, this really dissonant, more more attitude and emotion, rather than very melodic and orchestrated, songs. It was more like an attitude.
Hmm.
And so that's what got me started back then. Band, we called ourselves Scared of Horses. and then
Okay.
and then a few years went down the road there, and we changed the name.
Did you guys like, I mean, was that kind of your full-time thing at that point? Like, were you pursuing it as like, okay, we're gonna try to get signed, we're gonna tour? Like, like,
No,
did that ever
that
happen?
that
And not
at
with that
that
band?
point, I was doing electrical work because my dad an electrician,
Okay.
so that was how I was paying the bills. And those few years, we started doing shows around the Boston area, Providence, Worcester, and
Mhm.
we got fairly popular, and so we started doing recordings. We wanted to record a record, and then at that point, that's when things took an even more serious turn, because the song sounded really great recorded wise, and we
Mhm.
caught a little bit of attention from some people out in Los Angeles and in New York City in the
Oh,
in the
wow.
record business.
Okay.
Nothing ever came of it, but we had their ear, right?
Right,
So
right.
we just kept on going, and played around the Boston scene. We changed our name of the band to Swag,
Okay.
and
That's a good name.
got to think back in the early mid '90s that we had
Okay.
this name, and nobody really knew what Swag was. We did because I got a job in Boston as working on a crew that set up PA systems for one of the bigger clubs, where all
Oh,
the
okay.
touring bands would come through, and the tour managers would hand us T-shirts and baseball hats and keychains, and they'd go, here kids, here's some swag. So I
Oh, yeah,
thought,
yeah,
oh
yeah,
man,
yeah,
that's a
yeah,
cool name.
sure.
All my
Ok.
buddies hated it. They go, what are you naming your band? I'm like, Swag. Like, come on, man. And I'm like, no, we're doing it. So
Well, it's
it
like you can
stayed
have,
Swag.
yeah, swag, like giving away free swag, or like you got swagger. I don't know. I
Yep.
think it's cool.
Swag was another
Swag.
thing,
Yeah.
that's like, dirt weed or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. There you go. Swag. I remember that.
Anyway,
So that you
yes.
got a little bit of attention from, the or at least LA and New York. And
hmm
how do you make it to Los Angeles at this point? Or
So
is that years later?
serendipity, really, but no, it like around 95, um, we were sending our little recordings everywhere, and we caught the interest of the chief engineer at A&M Recording Studios out in Los Angeles,
Wow.
and he loved the band, and he said, dude, I want to record you guys." So the next 2 years, he was coming out to Boston. We were jumping into a studio. He would record us and produce, and then we'd fly out to Los Angeles for a weekend, and he'd record us there. And then I think we did this for a couple of years, while we still played in the Boston area. And then
Hmm.
around '98, uh, David said, you guys should come on out here. We'll set you up at A&M Recording Studios. We'll do a record, and then we'll see what the label thinks. And we're like, sure, let's do it. And
Yeah,
so
that's
we packed it
huge.
up, and we headed out to Los Angeles. And we crashed on a buddy of ours sofa, and their living room chairs, and one of the storage rooms or something, and then we were during the day and afternoons and early evenings, we're at A&M Recording Studios recording what would be our debut record.
Uh-huh.
So that was like, wow, we were like, this is cool.
Yeah, that's huge.
The world was wide open at that point. We didn't, no real expectations, but we're starting to think about, maybe this, we're hoping maybe this could work out.
Hmm.
So, um, and right right when we were getting to the mix phase of a handful of songs, we're in one of the studios, and one of the A&R guys came in, and he was like white as a ghost, and we're like, what's the matter? What's going on? And he said, A&M Records just closed their doors. And we're like, what? We couldn't believe it.
Whoa.
And Dave, the chief engineer, he's like, are you kidding me? So
Oh, he didn't even know.
he didn't know either, right? And
Oh, he's
so,
like, well, now I'm out of a job. Oh my
right.
gosh.
So we all that was a total bummer right there, right?
Yeah.
And so, and I'll never forget, the drummer said, 50 plus years this label's been around, and they decide to close the day that we're almost finished with the record.
Yeah.
So we're all
Oh.
devastated, really. The studio itself and us, the label personnel, everything. And we thought, well, that's it. What are we gonna do? And but we had the songs because we didn't really sign the dotted line at that point. So we
Yeah, I
owned
was
all
going to
our
ask you
music.
that. So you actually still had the recordings and everything were yours still.
Yes.
So you were able to take them with you.
I did. So we and at that point we started playing in Hollywood quite a bit. We had played at almost every club at that point, and we started to build a little following in Hollywood.
Were you playing just like the local clubs around there? Or
yeah, like
you,
the
okay,
Whiskey
and Viper
all the
Room and those things.
the Viper Room, and there was a place called the Gig on Melrose.
Okay.
And there was a crappy little club up in Santa Monica Boulevard called the Garage, and we played all of them. So we finished. What really happened was A&M Recording Studios was on the A&M lot. So when they shut down the label operation, the studio was in limbo. They really didn't know what was going on. So they never told them to close their doors, and they never told them, what was up. So they just continued to operate. They were still getting their paycheck. So
okay. So
we were able,
essentially, like the label essentially was closed, but then the studio, they didn't quite shut down yet. So bands were still coming in and recording. Got it. Okay.
And every day they didn't know what was going to happen. Right. So we were able to go in and finish the record. And what ultimately happened was that Henson, the Muppets, Henson had bought the A&M lot, and they told the recording studio that you guys are safe. We're going to keep you intact and going. So ultimately, they survived all that, and they ended up.
It is Jim Henson. Is it still Jim Henson Studios now?
Yeah, Henson Studios.
Oh wow,
yeah.
A guy I went to college with, his brother works there as like a mixer engineer of some sort.
Great studio. It's really
that's
awesome.
crazy.
Yeah,
I didn't realize it's the same lot.
Yeah,
the same studio.
They took the A&M sign down and put Kermit the Frog up there.
That's awesome.
On La Brea and Hollywood Boulevard.
Wow.
So anyways, yeah, we were able to do that. So we had the record, and we shopped it around a little bit, but no one took it. So, we just decided, all right, well, now what we're going to do, we might as well just keep on playing in Hollywood, which is what we did. And then at our shows that we're playing, there was a lot of editors, film editors and producers and directors that would come see our show. And we got to be friendly with quite a handful of them. And one day, one of the editors asked us if we'd play a party, an annual party that he had at his place up in the Hollywood Hills. And we said, sure, we'll play it. We'll do a bunch of covers. We'll play some originals and all that. And we did the party, and we stayed up all night. It was one of those classic Hollywood parties that you read about. And like 2 days after that, we got a phone call from one of the editors asking if we'd like to submit some music to a movie trailer that he was working on.
Oh,
and we said, yeah, sure.
Right.
And the next question was, when do you need it? And he's like, tomorrow. And we're like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Tomorrow? Are you kidding me? Right? It was already like 4:00 in the afternoon. So we said, yeah.
Did you have was it just submit a song, or did you get to look at the edit of the trailer or any of that?
Yes. So strangely enough too, back then they were running, they had runners run back and forth. I think it was a CD back then, or a beta or something. Nothing, nothing was flown through the internet at this point. It wasn't that good of a technology. So the guy said, oh, we're going to send a runner over with the picture, and you guys can cut to this, and this is what we need, orchestral piece type music. And we're like, we're scared. And we're like, okay, we're going to give it a go. Let's do it. And we made a bunch of phone calls and got a Cubase recording system. It's similar to Pro Tools.
Okay.
We stayed up all night trying to
So
do
you
this
ended
piece.
up going to buy a rig just
We
to
borrowed
try to.
this. No, we
Oh, you
borrowed this from a
borrowed it.
friend,
Okay,
right?
okay. So you borrow it,
Yep,
and basically to just be like, okay, let's see if we can pull
yep,
this off. I mean,
yep.
yeah, got you. Okay.
And we stayed up all night. This is we as Jamie and I. That was the guitarist in my band, Jamie Anderson, and we stayed up all night to do this piece of music. And we finally finished it like 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. The runner was going to come at like 9:30 in the morning to pick up all our stuff. So we had a little bit of a little bit of
Oh
cushion there.
man.
And it was like a 55-second piece of music that was orchestral and had some drum stuff on it,
Okay.
right? Kind of upbeat, And I was trying to figure out what movie it was back then. I thought it was Sandlot 2, but that came a little bit later, and I'm forgetting what that first movie was that we did for it. So,
Mhm.
anyways, the guy comes and picks it up from us, and a few hours later, we get a call from the editor, and he goes, "We love it. We want to use it." And we're like, "Yeah,
Wow.
cool. Yes, that's cool. Thanks." So, we get to try to figure out how much. We asked a few editors that we knew how much we should charge for this, and we came up to a number of $6,000,
Mhm.
and we're like, $6,000, holy mackerel. So they accepted it, and that was it. We were in business. And
Mhm.
Jamie and I thought, oh my gosh, this is crazy, so the very
Yeah.
next day we went out and bought a Pro Tools rig, and we
Okay.
set up shop, and the phone calls started coming in. It just took off from that point. We were doing, before you knew it, we were doing music cues for Spider-Man 1 that came out, Spider-Man 2,
Really?
Batman
Wow.
Begins. I mean, we happened to just hit, the right combination of people that were working on these particular projects. They loved our music. We were timely with it, and we weren't price gouging any of them. We
Mhm.
we kind of figured out, the lay of the land a little bit of where we should be. And so it just skyrocketed and that was in 2000, 2001. By 2004, we were doing almost, all the movies that were coming out of Hollywood, at
Were
least
you
getting a cue or two in the movie trailers for, and television spots for, the big blockbuster films.
Wow. So when you say a queue, just because I'm not too familiar with this side of the industry, really.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I've interviewed a handful of people that have done this, but
Yeah.
I'm curious. So like you at first you get the trailer and you write the music to the trailer.
Yeah.
And then once you get other pieces, is it like, okay, we need a music for this scene, we need music for this bit? Like how like what were they pitching to you?
So in the trailers, they're quick edits usually,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So it's more about emotion, you know what I mean, and excitement, right? So
Hmm.
they're always uplifting type pieces, and it's, they'd give an example of a piece of music that they would like, that we could do a likeness of, or just a stylized genre or something that they wanted, and we would just go for it. And then way back then in the beginning, we would get the actual picture itself, so we could pace the piece of music that was needed in that particular part of the trailer, or the whole trailer itself, whatever
Hmm.
they wanted us to do. And so um, it was that kind of back and forth with the producer and the editor of the movie trailer, in what they wanted, and we'd go back
Okay.
and forth a little bit, do revisions sometimes here and there.
Hmm.
Um, Once in a while, would hit the grand slam on the first version, but usually there'd be a little bit of tweaking here and there. But it
Hmm.
was mostly, uh, instrumental, orchestral element to it. Big drums, heavy guitars sometimes, and then there was a handful of sound design type things that were going on. More emotional type sounds and soundscapes. And so, and a music cue could go anywhere from like 5 seconds to a minute and a half, a minute 55 seconds. They always laid somewhere between there, 10 seconds and a minute. Sometimes they would edit it shorter as well, and we'd still get um
Full.
the full
thing.
amount of money
Right,
for
right, right.
whatever they use. Yeah, yeah,
Interesting. Okay. So,
yeah.
well, how long did you do that for? Or are you still doing
So
that?
I still do it on a very small scale. 2000 and 2008, 2007-ish, Jamie and I dissolved a partnership. We had a partnership doing this from 2000 to about 2007, and we called ourselves Swag Music Group because the band was Swag, so we
Right.
needed a name, so we
That's
called ourselves
cool.
Swag
Yeah.
Music Group. And then I continued on my own as Lucky 13 Music. Jamie did his with J Tracks, and he also got into voiceover. So he was kind of shifting a little bit, and
Okay.
me, I was kind of drifting. He was
Hmm.
shifting, I was drifting. I didn't know what the heck was gonna go. I at that point, I completely stopped the artist life of myself. It completely went into this composing thing, and so
Which is essentially still art, right? I mean, you're writing
yeah,
songs for
it, you know,
films.
yep, creative. I mean,
Yeah.
there was a cookie cutter element to it.
Hmm.
One time we were doing music, got asked to do music for Basic Instinct 2, right? So
Hmm.
that movie completely tanked. But they wanted to change the kind of formula for trailer music, and asked us if we could do this different approach. And it was using actually elements from Jerry Goldsmith's score from Basic Instinct 1 to kind of beef that up or something like that. Well, the focus groups that look at these things, it didn't test well. So they said,
Oh, okay.
let's go back to the old old way of doing it.
Okay.
So there was a moment there where they were going to change things a little bit, but it's pretty much
Back.
the same stuff.
Well, now they kind of use like now they'll pay for what writes the big songs and do that and put
Well,
those in the trailer, or that's
some
was happening then, and you would just add the in between elements.
that was happening then. That was
Okay.
happening then. But I don't know if they do it in a larger scale than what they used to. Back then, strangely enough, there was only like six different entities that were doing this trailer music. We were one of them. And
Hmm.
then by 2007, 2008, there was like I would say there's musicians coming out of the woodwork wanting to try to
Right.
do this
Okay.
this niche of the business that we had no idea existed when we started, and then we made a great career out of it.
Hmm.
Everybody, now, I mean, if I had to do this all over again, it's way too daunting. I don't even think I'd be able to
It's
do
probably
it.
oversaturated with people
Oh,
now.
there's way
Yeah.
too much. There was a point there where everybody was giving music away for nothing, so it was diluting the value of it all too. I mean,
Uh-huh.
it was a crazy time between 2008 and 10 that things were going on.
Okay.
But now there's a lot of different companies. There's a lot of musicians that will submit music to some entity that collects all these pieces of music,
Hmm.
and gives them 50% of publishing and like maybe a couple $100 or something, and then
Yeah, there's
pitches it to
companies
the
that will now you can pay for like a service, like almost like a
right.
Netflix that you
But
can
the
use
reality
their
of it is that
catalog or whatever.
yeah, the reality of it is those guys are making thousands of dollars on these cues. We
Hmm.
didn't we didn't have one of we were our own entity with the relationships with the movie studios and the trailer houses. So we didn't have to give away anything to anybody. We had it all. And you get a lot of money for some of these music cues. If even if you do a cover song, sometimes we'd do cover songs, and that would be a master sync license, and you get a good amount of money for it depending on the popularity of the song that they're going to cover. So
Wow.
yeah, really, really. I mean, crazy. If you asked me back in, when I was playing in Boston, whether I'd be doing something like that, I'd say you're crazy. There's no way. Because
Sure,
I was,
sure.
I wanted to be a rock star back then. I wanted to
Yeah.
follow in the footsteps of the Beatles and Bono from U2.
Yeah, which
you
is
know,
interesting because even the bands like I was interviewing somebody and like they had this perception of this band that came out of their town. He's in this band now, but he was younger than the band and then they got successful and then he ended up joining the band when they needed a player recently enough.
yeah,
And he was just saying like, yeah, it was crazy to see, like I thought that these guys were like millionaires and they're doing all this stuff and then you find out that like that's not
right,
even a fraction of what was happening, but the
right.
allure of like having the songs on certain things now, I mean, this is not that long ago, and
Right.
just kind of the idea of like they're like the Beatles, and obviously the Beatles, but like
Yeah.
the rock stars of like the 80s when it comes to like the hair metal bands that were just like girls and partying and all that stuff. Like it's so few and far between now with the way music is consumed. It's just
Oh
such a
yeah.
different world.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
funny. Well, that's awesome that you guys were able to cut through and do that. I mean, still be
Yeah.
creative, still have a career in the music industry and
Right.
even in the film. I mean, that's awesome.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I really enjoyed it. There was nights there where like, like anything,
Right, of
trying to
course.
get through the night, but for the most part, it was cool. I do, later on in the 2010, 12-ish, we did start to play again. We'd do one show a year in
Hmm.
in Hollywood, and people would come out to see us play. So, but I never really started performing again like I used to prior to this composing thing until I moved here to Nashville. And
Okay.
then I started writing and playing again. Back, a few years prior to that, it was just one show a year in Hollywood.
Okay.
And
So when
so
you
moving
decided,
here kind of
yeah, to
changed
make the
things a
move
little.
that changed the whole, yeah, it changed how
I wasn't,
you're
yeah, I wasn't
approached
quite
the music.
sure,
Yeah.
the trailer stuff and the music cues. I have two boutique libraries that you license off of, but the industry had changed a little bit. And, I wasn't like going after it, like, and it wasn't coming to me like it was, the years prior. So
Hmm.
I wasn't quite sure what to do. So I just started playing again, doing acoustic things around here and writing crappy songs for a little while and just kind of getting back into getting that muscle working again to playing and singing.
And
So.
and now you have a record out,
I know this
Chasing the
is
Dream.
crazy
So
too. I
like,
mean,
so tell me about this. Like, when did you decide to go? I mean, obviously you were playing around town and stuff, but
yeah.
was it okay? I'm ready to put a record out. I'm going to really push forward as as an artist.
So um, you know I had just before COVID hit, I was going to book some shows, and I booked one in Los Angeles. We're going to do a writers round,
Hmm.
two people from Los Angeles and two people from Nashville. We're going to do one here in Nashville. I'm going to do one in Los Angeles. And then that was all blown out the water because the world shut down. I think March of 2020, or yeah, March of 2020, everything shut down. That was when the first show was going to happen.
Oh.
So I'm like, yake. Now what? Nobody knew what the heck was going to happen.
Hmm.
Um, so I just started to, keep writing little things. And there was one, we have horses out here. So there's one day I was out in the barn in the stall taking care of the horses, and I was just flipping through YouTube and on the internet, and I came across a video, a performance of Elliott Smith joining John Bryan. John Bryan was he's a composer and a producer and writer, but back then he was just a musician. He had a show every Friday night at Largo in Hollywood, and everybody in the whole world down there came to see John Bryan play. Incredible musician, multi instrumentalist, and he had this great show. And he would have special guests come and play with him. And this particular one was Elliott Smith. And matter of fact, I think we probably were at that show because when we were at A&M Recording Studios, we used to go to this John Bryan Friday night Largo thing. So, and I couldn't quite remember. Anyways, I saw this Elliott Smith thing, so I said, I'll click on it and watch it for a few minutes. And I ended up watching the whole thing. It was like 40 minutes performance, and it inspired me so much that I came into the house and I started playing guitar, and within an hour I had the first song for the record. I didn't know it was going to be a record at that point. Living in LA, and later that night I started coming together another song, Boxley Valley. The next day I had that one finished, and then those 4 or 5 days after that I had 6 songs done, demoed, and with just an acoustic performance with the melody lines and and the lyrics.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, now what am I gonna do with this? I really like them, and I'm like, I guess I got an album going here. I'll keep on going, and so I did. I just kept writing, and I was kind of surprised that Elliott Smith had sparked that creativity in me. Usually over the years it had been David Bowie. Every time I listened to
Uh,
David Bowie, he would get the creative juices flowing in me.
yeah.
So this was kind of out of left field a little bit for me. I love Elliott Smith and his
Mhm.
music, and um, so in about 2 weeks' time, I had about 10 songs, and I started demoing them. I called up a friend of mine, Sean Fichter, drummer, who here in Nashville, we had this little '70s rock cover thing going on for the last couple of years. Prior to COVID, we'd get together and get a show down here in Leapers Fork at Puckett's, and we'd play a bunch of '70s rock tunes,
That's awesome.
And these guys, Sean played with Tim McGraw, and Kenny Greenberg was guitar. He'd played with Kenny Chesney for the longest time. I think he just stopped playing with him.
Wow.
These session guys that
Yeah.
I uh, had met when I first moved here, and we struck up a great friendship. So and when it came time to do the record, I asked Sean if he'd like to drum, and he said sure. So he started cutting drums for all the songs that I demoed, and I called up my buddy Jamie, my old bandmate that I had the composing partnership with. He was still out in Los Angeles. I asked him if he wanted to join in and play guitar and bass and whatever he wanted to contribute, and he said,
Mhm.
"Sure, let's do it." And then another friend of mine, Stefano, who's an artist in his own right, out in Los Angeles, Stefano Capobianco, and did some stuff. So we flew the sessions back and forth from Nashville to Los Angeles. Kenny
Wow.
Greenberg did some guitar on the record as well.
Okay.
And a few months down the road, we had a good 7 solid songs that I thought, well, a few of these, this could do something here. There was
Mhm.
one song that I revisited from a while back called "Time Won't Heal," but all the others were written in 2020 in that 2 month that two
Interesting.
month period.
Yeah.
So there
That's
we
great
go.
that
We
you're
had a record.
inspired, right? Yeah.
Oh my gosh, and I was so grateful and that these guys were willing to play on the record. Um, I remember one time getting a rough mix back, and I usually wake up like before anybody does. Before even the sun comes up, I grab my coffee and I kind of stare out the window at the horses in the barn and stuff,
Uh-huh.
just thinking about things.
Yeah.
And I'm listening to one of the mixes, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is pretty good. I think I really like this actually. I think I may want the public to hear all this stuff too. So so then, I get in the mode of, what I had done years past with the band back then is like, okay, I guess I'm going to put a record out. So I got to get all the moves together of doing that. And,
Mhm.
here we are. I mean,
Now it's out, right? I
now it's
mean,
out. Yeah. And
amazing.
I think I've gotten a lot of great feedback from it. Um, and it's independent. I'm not with a label or a
Mhm.
publishing house or anything. So there's only so much that I can do. But I'm trying to do my part to let as many people hear this record as possible. Uh, I'd like these little songs to grow, as the phrase would be, and
Sure.
you know, get as many people as possible to hear this. And so yeah, it's been really cool. I get to talk to people like you too, so I'm happy about that.
Yeah,
Very
it's a
happy
great
about that.
record. I listened to it before we got on this call, and I
Oh,
think, I
cool.
mean, it's an awesome. Yeah, I think it's a rad record, and that's awesome that you're still doing shows and doing stuff around here. Since we both live around here, I'd love to come
Right.
catch you play. And
Oh yeah,
I yeah,
that'd be cool if you can do that. Sure.
yeah, and I appreciate you doing this interview, John. This has been awesome.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate you having me. It was fun talking to you. I like that
Yeah.
we're neighbors too. That's
Right, I
kind of
know.
cool,
It's
right?
so cool. That's so
Yes.
cool. Well, I have one more quick question for you. I want to
Okay.
know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
Oh, interesting. Um, yeah, I do actually. I would say that if you really have passion for something, you gotta stick to it, right? Um, we get bombarded by a bunch of stuff in life, and as you get older, there's other things, obligations that you need. But if you can stay true and devote some time to your passion, then um, I think you'd be better off for it. You know, as far as the trailer music and composing, it's really, you have to have skill for sure, but it's all about the people that you meet. So and the network that you become friends with and stuff like that. That's helpful. So I don't know, join a community of musicians or composers or whatever, or producers and editors, and that type of thing. But everything's subjective. It's so hard in the music and the acting world.
Mhm.
But I think too, if you just stick to it, stick to your guns, be yourself, and then you will succeed. It may take a little longer than you really would hope, but I think you would succeed.
Bringing it backward.